Hello, this is PG, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm reviewing State of Decay 2 Juggernaut Edition on the Xbox Series X. The game's also available on Steam. State of Decay 2 is an action-adventure survival game developed by Undead Labs and published by Xbox Game Studios. The game sees you play as a group of survivors as they try to navigate a zombie apocalypse. The game can be played solo but also has online multiplayer. Okay, gameplay. Well, first things first, you have to select 3 survivors for your group and which of the several maps you'd like to start in. Your first task is to find a home for the group. Now, you can relocate at a later date, but initially you just need to find a safe space to hold up. Once you're settled, the next phase of the game focuses on supply runs. In order for your group to grow, you need supplies, whether that be food, fuel, or other key items like firearms or painkillers. All these things are available in the game world, but you've got to go out there and find them. They might be in a garden shed, a gas station, or a broken down car. You never really know. So the game, it really does encourage you to explore and scavenge. Once your bag is full, you can head home, drop off those supplies and go again if you wish. But there are 2 big issues to deal with. Firstly is your survivors will get tired or injured over time, and their health and stamina will diminish and drop. Thankfully, you can switch to a new survivor, but on occasions you may find yourself out in the field. For example, you'll be far away from home in a bit of a sorry state with death only moments away. This is where your second problem comes in the shape of zombies or the blood plague. Zombies come in various forms, from the George Romero style variants that are very slow. You've got bloaters who explode toxic gas, screamers who call for aid, ferals who are fast and deadly, or juggernauts who will literally smash your brains in. If your weary survivor stumbles on a group or a special variant, it's more than likely you are going to die. And this is one of the best parts of State of Decay. Obviously, nobody wants their survivors to die, right? Of course. But if they do, it is permadeath. They are not coming back. Why is this good? Well, for one thing, it makes you take every situation seriously. It also makes you get attached to the survivors who don't die. Over time, they can improve. They can learn special skills and become much stronger. So when they do die, you really feel it. Thankfully, you can always recruit new members around the game world, but it doesn't change how special the permadeath feature really is and how much value it adds, especially that first moment when they die. It's terrifying.
I don't want to go out like this!
So, you've survived a few days, you've gathered up some resources. What then? Well, you can use those supplies to build things. Now, this is not a free-form survival game where you can build anything anywhere. No, instead you've got squares like allotted in the base. They're empty, but you can choose to build things in them like beds, rain collectors, latrines, crops, power generators, or an infirmary. What you build shapes how the community will develop, and it will also shape what your community needs, in terms of supplies. For example, if you're in a map where food is pretty hard to find, you might be better off planting a farm, growing seeds. Or if you're playing on a very high level difficulty and you need a lot of ammunition, again, you might want to create a workshop where you can produce that kind of stuff. It's really up to you, and even though a more free-form approach would have been nice as an option, it's still functional and it does the job. There's no real complaints there from me. Now, after a while, your survivors will become citizens, and then it's time to pick your leader. Who you select as leader will change how the campaign's endgame is shaped. For example, if you choose a leader that's a warlord, the endgame is going to be more focused on combat, killing off hostile groups, and that kind of thing. But like I said, the game features permadeath, so even if you do choose a leader who's a warlord, for example, if they die, your next leader could be some other type of leader that could lead to a different variation. Now, again, I just want to touch on permadeath one more time, and how much of a masterstroke that really is. There's nothing quite like it, especially like I said earlier, when you lose your first survivor who you've got attached to, that really stings. But the one good thing is that as your survivors make it through, like if you survive a campaign, they go into your legacy pool. And like for me, I had 3 sort of legendary survivors. I had Joe, Ulysses and Charlie May. Together they saw me through multiple maps. However, one sad day, Joe bit the bullet on a sort of a terrible plague heart run, and it just left Ulysses and Charlie to take turns in leading the community. It's this spanning of time across several maps and several playthroughs with the characters that makes you feel really connected to them, and knowing that they can die at any moment, it really adds a weighty feel to every moment that you're in the actual game world. I'm not a big fan of permadeath in general in gaming, but I think if it's in this sort of community aspect type game, I think it really worked, and it's something you should just, absolutely applaud the developers for implementing. Anyway, so yeah, let's touch on the combat, shall we? It's a third-person game, and it's very, very smooth. Melee weapons and knives are there, you've got explosives, but you've got a main and a side firearm that you can select from. And, there's a backpack as well that you can carry lots of supplies in. Depending on whether you want to be like Recon or a pack mule, you can have a bigger or smaller pack. I'd say the weapons are really good, they're excellent. The ammo's scarce, so you really do have to pick your shot. But it's one thing about the game that I really love, the weapons are really cool, and also headshots count. None of this bullet sponge rubbish unless you're dealing with one of the elite zombies. If you shoot a zombie in the head, or even if you shoot a hostile human threat in the head, that head's gone, mate, you're done. So it really kind of adds high impact to combat scenarios. And you can also add some attachments like silencers and scopes, but yeah, combat really, really a lot better in this game than you would probably expect.
Reloading.
In terms of the game world, there's several maps that you can play through, including the actual map from State of Decay 1. They're big enough without being too bloated, but they do feel, I would say, a little bit samey after a while. One aspect about the world that I haven't really touched on are the plague hearts. What are these? Plague hearts kind of take over an area and they stop you taking ownership of player bases or creating outposts within that region until the plague heart is gone. And the plague hearts create zombies with red eyes, and that virus can contaminate you, and if you get it for a long period of time you will turn, so you have to find a cure. So it's an interesting part of the campaign. The blood, like once you've set up your base, that's phase 1. Phase 2 is deal with all of the blood plague, and the third phase is where you establish the group's leader's legacy, and this is like where other survivors come in. Now, in terms of other survivor groups, I would say they're a bit too nice. They don't feel very authentic to an apocalyptic setting. Like, where are the cannibals? Where are the extreme fanatical cults? Where are all the murderers? It feels like they're all like leftover extras from an episode of Friends, and I think the developers have missed a trick here. They could have really, really gone to town on some absolutely bonkers and messed up rival factions that could have scared the hell out of you, Instead, they're all a bit drab. Instead you just end up with some random dude called Chet stealing some of your stuff. You chase him down. He says, "Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Chet, by the way." It's like, Chet, shut your mouth. You're dead. Bang.
Feels good to take out the trash.
Somebody fucking help me!
Now, how you deal with these other groups, that affects their loyalty to you. And this is something that comes into play later in the campaign. You see, like once the plague heart threat is dealt with, then it's about shaping the world, how you lead it, how you've interacted with those groups. Did you help them? Did you ignore them? That will define whether they're friendly, neutral or hostile. But I would say all of this third phase endgame, where it's like the final phase of doing a level, I would say it's underwhelming. I'd say it's quite dull. It usually ends up with you having to drive all the way across the map to speak to 3 different people, come home, and then you do it again. It's all very fetch questy and quite naff. I think more work should have gone into the end game in maps because it's just really not very good. It's there, it's something to do. It's quite dull though. Now over time, one thing I would say about the devs here, they have continued to support this game year after year after year after year. It's really beautiful to see. And one of the things that they did add since the last time I played it were curveballs. What are these? Well, they're like variable conditions that affect the game world, the zombies, your group for a period of time. You know, zombies can be more deadly, there might be more plague, the cars might not work, there might be certain other conditions, and it just gives you a sort of a unique quality to a game that can get a bit boring after a while. Finally, on gameplay, let's talk about modes. So you've got the campaign, which is what I've just detailed in kind of comprehensive style. Secondly, there's a thing called Heartland. Heartland, I would say, is more comparable to State of Decay 1. It's a narrative-driven story about what happened in the map from the first game, between the first and the second game. It's good up to a point. It does become quite tiring. There's like a phase in it where you've got to deal with these plague walls that I have to say, one of the most time intensive and dull things I've ever done. Not a fan of that part, but you know, it's another option to play through. The third option is a thing called Daybreak. What is Daybreak? It's like minimal horde mode. You're in a tiny space, there's walls, there's a guy who you got to protect, zombies are coming, bang bang bang, done. You know, it's fine. It's really underdeveloped. They could have done so much more with this and they didn't. It's kind of like they just stuck it in, like there you go. But again, there's so much that hasn't been done in this Daybreak mode that they could have done. But yeah, anyway, that's the gameplay. In terms of graphics, visually, I'd say it has a kind of an understated style, but I really like how things look in terms of the realistic approach. It's very polished as well. The frame rate is solid on the Series X from the character movements, the zombies, the environments, everything's smooth. In terms of sound, I'd say the voice acting is pretty believable, the music adds more depth to the experience, and the sound effects, the atmospheric sound, the guns, the cars, the zombies, the distance of sounds works really nicely. Anyway, verdict, State of Decay 2 Juggernaut Edition is an enjoyable, well thought out and in-depth zombie survival game that's very difficult to put down. It has a simple premise, but one that keeps you coming back for more, and I have to say, it's one of my personal favourites. From the polished presentation to the fluid combat, and the addition of permadeath makes every moment feel more intense than it would otherwise. Yes, perhaps the NPCs are lame, and the maps are a bit repetitive, as like a sort of a copy-paste job, and also no character creator is a little bit of an omission, but these are only minor issues. It's a game that in general is very well made, very well supported by the devs, and yeah, I don't ever grow tired of it. I always come back to it every few months. As an aside, I did make a video way back in the day about things that I wanted to see in State of Decay 3 that might make it better. I'll put a link in the description and the comments to that if you're interested, but scoring wise, State of Decay 2 Juggernaut Edition, I'd give it a 9 out of 10. That's the review. Thanks for watching. This is PG signing off. Cheers.